Greetings, dear ones. This is Christina, the Black Swan Sybil, greeting you in the love and the light of the one infinite Creator. In today's cosmic conversation, I am speaking with Cynthia Sue Larson, the Quantum Optimist. Cynthia Sue Larson is the best-selling author of 6 books who helps people visualize and access whole new worlds of possibility. Cynthia hosts Living the Quantum Dream on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. She's been featured on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, and the BBC, and has presented papers at international conferences on science, spirituality, and consciousness. Since 1999, Cynthia has shared findings from scientific research in the fields of quantum physics, quantum biology, the placebo effect, positive psychology, sociology, and alternative medicine. Cynthia's articles have appeared in journals ranging from Cosmos and History to Magical Blend to Parabola. Results from Cynthia's How Do You Shift Reality surveys conducted in April 2000 and June 2013 document incidences of the most commonly experienced types of reality shifts. And her Reality Shifters website has compiled one of the most extensive collections of reality shift reports in the world. Her popular e-zine Reality Shifters is eagerly awaited each month by thousands of subscribers worldwide. Cynthia has a degree in physics from UC Berkeley, an MBA degree, and a Doctor of Divinity. Cynthia reminds us to ask in every situation, how good can it get? Without further ado, please welcome Cynthia Sue Larson. Thank you for co-creating this experience with me today.
Oh, I'm so glad to talk with you today, Christina.
It's so nice to meet you, yeah.
Yeah. And I love your fascination and enthusiasm about the topic. It was great to see that in your emails. So I really appreciate that because I'm obviously enthusiastic about it. So it's always great to meet someone else who's equally, at least, equally intrigued by it.
Yeah. Well, I have your books and I haven't read them all, but I'm definitely experience a vibe shift when I read. As soon as even I pick up the book, I start feeling the energy that you have put into it, and it raises my vibe. So I highly recommend that people check them out.
Yay. Thank you. Well, that certainly was the intent when I was writing them, of course, just because I love to ask how good can it get. And I really mean it. I really would love to see that for all of us, everyone on the planet and every being, plant, animal, human, all of us.
Amen. Well, let me first say a little bit about where I'm coming from. My focus is on people who are newly awakening to the concept of consciousness, especially people with a Christian background who are just now finding that the black and white dogma of religion no longer resonates with them. And the way I came to this focus is that I was born highly psychically empathic into a family of sociopaths, so that not only did none of my caregivers understand me, they were abusive by nature, and even more abusive toward me because of who I was. So when as a child I described my profound spiritual experiences to them, they told me I would find what I was looking for in church. I sought relief in Christianity, which led me to become Jehovah's Witness. This, however, led to more oppression because I was told that the psychic things I experienced were occult, satanic, or of the devil. And I suffered greatly until I finally embraced my abilities, left the cult, and began to heal from the trauma. And what I see now are a lot of people who seek safety in religion, labeling everything outside of those bounds as evil. And what I find so appealing about your reality shifting or quantum jumping approach to reality and to spirituality is the emphasis not only on keeping our focus positive, but also keeping our minds open to all possibility without expectation or limitation, and exploring past our perceived limits of just how positive we believe it is possible for things to be. And you've collected so much evidence that seemingly impossible things really can happen to anyone, and miracles become everyday occurrences. So they're not just for saints anymore.
Love it. What a great tagline. I can just see it now. Quantum jumps, not just for saints anymore.
Right.
Oh, I love it. Love your playful nature. And what a background, what experiences you've had. That's extraordinary. I felt like I was almost going to cry when you started reading, when describing what you'd been through as a child. That's because I was, I think I obviously a natural empath as well. And I think for those of us who walk that path, there's just no maybe there is no easy childhood for us, and maybe some sound a lot worse than others, but good heavens, it's rough.
Yeah.
So you made it. Yay.
Yes, I did. I'm healing. It's been a slow journey, but I feel a lot more clear now and able to control my feelings where I'm not, giving my power away.
Right. That's one of the first things to master as part of self-awareness, and know where those boundaries are. Because I think for empaths, we're so porous naturally. It's hard to know where we stop and someone else begins. And that's actually the key to quantum jumping, is just recognizing those levels of consciousness that we're always operating with, individually, collectively, and with levels and parts of ourselves. But it's such a big topic. But I'd like to go where you want to go with this. So.
Well, thank you. Yeah, my first question is just kind of, I'm trying to keep it down to earth for those people who are ready for the expansion. And so I asked if you were to take or teach a course designed for people who have come to the conclusion that there must be more to this reality than they had thought, and who'd believed in the teachings of their church their whole life, where would you begin? What would your course outline look like? What are the most important principles that you think should be in it?
Yeah, I haven't done too many courses. And the reason for that is because we're all so unique. I noticed not only do we have unique backgrounds, but we have unique gifts, if you will, natural abilities. Like there are some that are just natural born empaths, and I can't bring the non-empaths up to speed in even a day or two, even a week or two, and promise you'll be an empath. And what I've been finding is that people that tend to get the best results with quantum jumping are going to naturally be, from what I've seen in the studies and surveys I've conducted, intuitive feelers on the Myers-Briggs inventory, meaning empaths. So those people will have an advantage. So maybe if there's and I hate to leave people out. This is why I haven't done too many classes. It's more like a mystery school concept, to be honest with you. To really excel at this material depends. It's a huge topic. So where would I begin if I was to do such a thing? And I have done a couple of workshops. So it's not that I haven't done it. Usually I start with beliefs, and I show that that life itself is in a process of change. And this is just a given. The one thing that we all know is true is that everything changes, everything. So when you recognize, except perhaps things like infinite eternal love, the things that we can't measure, perhaps those are steady, and those would be the most likely to be so. Everything else, whether it's living or even inanimate, through the course of time, there are changes that happen. It's just natural. So when we look at our beliefs and start recognizing the way we see the world is not what it really is, and we know this is true, so we can start looking at some science. I like to start often with Donald Hoffman's research into the realm of perception and the way that everything that we bring in from out there into who we think we are has gone through so many transformations just to be processed and received by us, that even what we think is our vision of whether something's green or red and so forth, that's already been tremendously processed by the time it reaches us. So I'd start with beliefs, just asking people to really be gentle with themselves, be kind with themselves, and start by looking at what are your beliefs, not to beat yourself up over it, not to say this is right or wrong, but really to take a look at that. And are you willing to accept change as being something that's always ever present? With the possible exception that there is, I really am so spiritual. I can feel like, well, wait a minute, I can feel this infinite eternal love. And when you go in deeper and deeper into gratitude, reverence, then there's this ecstasy and joy that comes through. It's for real. I know it's there. I can feel it. So that to me would be the eternal, whatever you want to call it. And I think just for people to start recognizing, oh, I can experience this. It's okay to experience it. It's okay to trust my own process and to start with where I am with my beliefs and learn as I grow, and gently, kindly, with compassion, come to be my own best friend and recognize what can I sense that feels positive for me. So it really needs to be an inner journey, even if it is a group. Sorry about the long answer.
No, it's wonderful. I resonate with the things that you say, and I think that people need to hear that. And it's true. Our beliefs, we don't realize how much our world is created on our beliefs, and beliefs can change. And if you don't realize that, then you feel like you're stuck. And I think that leads into my next question, actually, which is, in the West, most people seem to generally have a belief that we learn about how the world works through our experiences. And you could say that this is a basic principle of empiricism. What I see happening when people apply this idea in their daily lives is that they have an experience, they learn from it, that that's just how the world works. And then that belief causes them to manifest the same experience again. And the more they have that same or similar experience, the more their belief is reinforced. And that's just how the world works. And they end up in a vicious cycle in which they are repeating a limited experience and becoming ever more accepting of the inevitability of that experience. So you could say this brings them into a state of spiritual stagnation, which is really hard to get out of again. So sometimes it seems to me that the empirical perspective is almost the opposite of the reality shifting or quantum jumping perspective. Do you think that empiricism and reality shifting are incompatible?
Well, they certainly do challenge each other. It's almost, to me, I see it like the yin and the yang, that Asian symbol of the circle with the little curvy shapes inside, each one containing a smaller circle of the opposite color. So it's sometimes depicted in black and white. And it just, so you've got these complementary, very seemingly disparate, seemingly contradictory approaches. The empiricism, as you point out beautifully, I love your question, that it's based on experience. And then somewhere along the line, we can get into this sort of chasing the tail cycle that stagnates, and it kind of goes downward into almost rumination, kind of dwelling on, well, this went wrong. And this gets into how so many people, I love to ask, how good can it get? There's a reason for that, because we need to get a little bit of balance as we start getting into this quantum jumping territory, reality shifting territory. So we can, even if we don't believe that things are all that great right now, we can ask, how good can it get? And it starts to lift us out of the quicksand a little bit. That is an empiricism quicksand. And a lot of scientists have been trained, even the ones that I know that are, I'm not going to name names right now, but they've been trained. And so even if they are, some of them are the hippies who saved physics. These are my friends, these guys that were in that book, the hippies, how the hippies saved physics. How did they do that? Because they dared to ask, what's really happening with quantum mechanics? What is causing all this? They ask the big questions. I know these guys personally, and some of them have real personal issues and belief blockages to recognize, how can I be witnessing at least one of these quantum jumps every day? And they actually got someone's, I'm not going to say who, but there was a swear word just a knee-jerk exclamation came out. Yeah. And I said, well, it's true for me. And then that person witnessed me observe a coin flip in another talk. And I just commented, well, this won't be any good for me, because I know what that is, a coin flip. So that's going to be tails. It's not really proving the scientist's point that this is a random flip. And then sure enough, it was tails. And then this same gentleman next to me just elbowed me like, can you tell me how you did that? Can you do that again? Can you do a whole string of those? And I laughed and said, it's not really the way it works. Because as soon as it starts turning into something mechanical, there's no interest in it for me. And so this empiricism that it seeks, this mechanistic, repeatable, like, can we do it again? Can we do it 10 times? Can we prove it? That's where it gets boring. And then the part of us who knows, the quantum jumper, the reality shifter, maybe not a saint, but the ones who can create these quantum jumps and miracles, basically, we know that's boring. We don't want to do that. We don't want to go there. So you can start to see that the assumptions that even these hippies who saved physics might be making, this is how ingrained it is in our way of thinking. It's so ingrained in us that only what's matters. And they know better. These are scientists who know better. But they haven't personally witnessed it. And I think it is exactly because of this little cycle you're describing. It's almost a stasis cycle, which kind of locks a person into, you can only get what you think you can get. We can only get what we see. We can't really believe that how good can it get as possible. And that's why I challenge everyone, just ask it anyway. Open that little door, just a crack, no matter how bad it may seem, or how blah it may seem, or how great it may seem. Keep asking, how good can it get? Let that be our habit for all of us to help each other, so that we can really lift all of consciousness. To me, that's my ultimate goal, for all of us to help each other.
I think that's what Jesus was talking about when he said, keep knocking and keep asking and you'll receive.
Yes. Oh, that's beautiful.
So, speaking of empiricism, in school, many of us were taught that something was called the scientific method. The steps were: one, formulate a hypothesis; two, do an experiment to test the hypothesis; three, decide whether the results support or refute the hypothesis. What seems to happen in science today is that the hypothesis or model people start with sets the limits about what they are willing to think about. It becomes a rigid filter through which they interpret experimental results. When many scientists start working on the same hypothesis, they can even become invested as a group in it being true and seemingly unwilling to refute it. In this way, the obligation to have a hypothesis can become a tool for perpetuating scientific dogma. How do you see the role of the hypothesis, and do you think it is possible to do science without hypotheses or models?
Ah, well, I love the two-part question. To start with part two, is it possible? Yes, but not with the system we've got currently. So obviously, it's possible to do science, but we're going to need a new kind of science. So we're because Western science is off the bat making some assumptions about that there is no such thing. There. See, I said it. I'm already biased against objectivity. I know objectivity does not really exist, but that is part of our Western science, that you can always, Western science, because they've accepted this objectivity assumption, they believe you can step in the same river twice, that 2 + 2 always equals 4. There's no exception. That everything is a machine, it's mechanistic, it's mechanical by nature. They don't even notice they've stepped into that quagmire. It's gone unnoticed because to them, the map is the territory. 2 + 2 is 4. And therefore you can step in the same river twice. Any indigenous wisdom keeper knows you can never step into the same river twice. Therefore, 2 steps into, it's not even the same river. 2 steps into a river, even the same river, it's 2 different steps. 4 steps, oh, who knows what could happen. It's not the same. 2 + 2 is not 4 because it's just not. And this is where it gets into quantum logic. Quantum logic is naturally challenging that. But going astray from your questions. I love your very logical, methodical questions. Okay, let's go back to
my partner for that. I'm the spiritual one. He's thinky, I'm feely.
Oh, I love it. Be sure to thank your partner.
Will.
It's brilliant. Okay. I love it because this is where the dialogue happens. You can see the magic, and thank goodness for your show. I think you're doing such a service to humanity by bringing this marriage of 2 perspectives together. Beautiful. I love it. So the hypothesis that you started with, the scientific method, I made a note here. I wrote down, you mentioned the hypothesis sets limits based on filters that they're not even aware that they're doing. That's exactly it. And if the people who are proponents of this Western scientific method, because it's all we've got, and so let's not tear it down too fast, maybe until we have something to replace it. So I'm not advocating chaos. Yeah. I'm recommending let's start looking for some new kind of, I think we're going to need a new mathematics that's based on process, not so much on these little points and things that are very Euclidean. They're very imaginative, from the imaginal realm that Henri Corbin talked about. So they're imaginary numbers, even though they may be what we call non-imaginary numbers. They're all imaginary. And they represent things, but they're not to be confused with what really is. And they worked really well for us. But the assumptions that are going wrong, I start with the objectivity assumption because it's key to what I've been noticing with reality shifts and quantum jumps, and also because as we move into quantum computing, quantum technologies, we're starting to see the basis by which this whole scientific method and the cycle you're pointing out with the hypothesis conundrum, it's about to be laid bare for those that are looking closely. Not everyone's seeing it, but I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it in the in the evidence brought forth by these experiments about the Wigner's friend paradox. I don't want to go into all that, but there's some really clear and it's ever increasing evidence that shows that not only can 2 observers be in the same place at the same time observing 2 different things, but each of those separate observers may have differences in their own histories with what they think happened and what happened in their own histories. It's an extremely interesting time to be alive. It's unsettling for those that are threatened, and you pointed out some people really feel like they have to stay with these beliefs and the scientific way of doing things, but we're bigger than that. Each one of us is stronger than that, bigger than that. And I think we're made for these times. We're made to expand our minds beyond these limiting precepts, even the limiting precepts of modern Western scientific method and the assumptions that go with it. And a lot of them are being broken right now, lots, by quantum physics, because we know everything's quantum at the very core. That means quantum physics denies a single history. The implications of just that single statement are profound. I mean, we could spend the whole hour just talking about that. This is a huge, huge subject.
Well, maybe we'll have to have another conversation in the future.
That would be wonderful. I really love this. I just love bringing these ideas together in the line of questioning that you're taking.
Thank you. I think that my partner, he has a PhD in mathematics. And when you mentioned that we need to change mathematics, I think that's what he's doing, because he spends a lot of time with geometric shapes, and he's just discovering all these new things. And he, when we first got in a relationship, we talked about, why he decided to go the route of mathematics, because he's not an actor. He doesn't have the desire to be a professor or whatever. He's doing something completely different. And when you said that, I think that's
perfect.
Yeah.
That's oh my gosh. It's so exciting, because if you look at quantum physics and you look at something like string theory, that if everything at the very core, smallest bit is just a vibrating string, that's movement, that's motion. Our math is not moving and it's not motion. We have things like calculus, but it requires separate vantage points and standpoints, viewpoints. But I love that view of consciousness also. I'm going all over the place. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. But math, yeah, when it gets into when it starts describing not just a thing, but the verbiness of reality, then we're going somewhere. That's the new mathematics. That's Nobel Prize material right there. Any mathematician who's a theoretical mathematician, I don't know if there's such a thing, but it sounds like maybe there is. That would be brilliant, and that's world changing, and we need it right now for all of quantum physics and quantum computing and all the technologies and everything.
Yeah, amen. I think so too. So I'm kind of going back into spirituality, and by asking you, how would you describe walking by spirit or faith in the current world situation from a reality shifter's perspective?
That's a good question, because we're seeing a lot of chaos right now. Seems like this is a time of people proving that they're right from different vantage points, and they all have tremendously good evidence. And it seems, and I would say it is so, that what they look for, they find, so they can find evidence. I'm not going to say exactly what. There's a lot of hot topics. It used to be, you just needed to steer clear of two subjects, politics and religion, and then you're fine. Nowadays, oh my gosh, it's like you can't talk about anything, whether it's education, you name it, like, woo, hot subject. So very interesting times. But I think that this really gets back to the core of, as you notice with the books that I've written, it's a very embracing approach. So it's not judging people or saying that we are right and they are wrong. It's just inviting everyone to, first of all, question these beliefs that we have. Do it in a kind way with yourself. You can do it in private. You don't need to admit to everyone, like, wow, I've been a little bit, gung-ho here. I'm the one that's been a little bit of a little crazy at times, just trying to prove my point. Yes, everybody can prove their points, but it doesn't really prove it. What's actually happening is everyone can look for the evidence that they seek and find it. Literally, absolutely can and will. That's why, again, going back to my favorite question, how good can it get? Rather than try to prove our individual points, I would recommend, let's ask that open-ended question, trusting in what I feel spiritually to be true, that there is this ultimate goodness. I really do feel it. To me, it's a reality. So I'm not just, I sense it, I feel it, I know it. I feel like, okay, this is real. But that's my truth, and I'm not going to foist that on anyone. But I would recommend everyone connect to whatever is bigger than you, that feels good, that feels like it gives you a sense of purpose and joy, whatever that is, and then challenge ourselves to expand. As we do that, then we can face this time of great chaos. And how do we do that? By listening, by being gentle with others, as we've learned to be gentle with ourselves, to not be fixated so much in trying to prove any one thing, but always accept whatever's happening as well. It's like playing golf and the ball lands in the sand pit. Well, there it's in the sand pit. So you don't throw a tantrum about it, hopefully. But you just real, maybe you can laugh about it. I can sometimes. Like, well, wouldn't you know? I'm in a sand pit. But I keep asking, how good can it get? Maybe something amazing will happen. And often it does. Maybe if I'm in the sand pit and I look up and there's an extremely rare bird that I thought was extinct, and it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, and it makes eye contact and it looks at me, and then we have this moment, and I'm so glad that my ball landed in that sand trap of life. So it's just a metaphor, but and I've been through this lot. I'm not just saying this. I've been through these things, and this is how I do it. So when we do that with each other, that's how I would recommend to move through this in a reality shifting state of mind, knowing everything can and does change, because quantum physics forbids a single history, because all those realities already exist. And so you think of it as collectively dialing in a preferred collective reality together when we don't individually know what's best for all of us. How could we? That's a little above my pay grade. But if we trust our higher, people say higher selves, that part of me that connects and feels like, I'm sure that this infinite love exists. I'm sure that I know it, I feel it, I trust it. And I know it's not a machine, and it's not to me, that doesn't feel right. So there are lots of theories of what's real, but just go with whatever's right for you. Keep it open for everyone else. Let them find their way. Trust in this greater goodness, that they're on the right course. Even if they look terribly misguided and they seem to be causing trouble, just trust, be kind anyway. I'm recommending kindness, listening, love, the usual things people recommend spiritually.
Thank you. We've noticed repeatedly that developments in current events mirror or parallel developments in our lives. This seems to go on, and sometimes it seems like a confirmation we're on the right path. Sometimes we make a decision and then see some new good news right after, and it seems like a confirmation that we made the right choice. Have you or others you have talked to experienced this as well? And what do you think it says about the nature of the common reality we are inhabiting?
Yes, thank you. These are great questions. I do experience that most recently with a group of the International Mandela Effect Conference organizers. It was amazing that we got together, as it turns out, right at the beginning of history changing in these pivotal moments of time. It was November 2019 in Sun Valley, Idaho. So that was the first, it was called the West Coast Mandela Effect Conference at the time. Then we found out we had participants from around the world, and some of our founding input and insights were coming from international community members as well. And I've been tracking this phenomenon for more than 2 decades internationally as well. So we called it International Mandela Effect Conference. And it's a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We had planned to do other events, but getting back to this whole thing, the fact that it happened the way it happened, I'm not going to go into all the details, but each of us individually felt like there's some unseen hand. There are things bringing this together against all odds, including a miraculous appearance of a podium lectern that we needed for the conference, that the hotel organizer said, and it just kept reassuring us, we don't have one. It would be great. I'll see what I can do. And then one day, you won't believe this, guys. Well, maybe you guys will believe this. Look what just showed up. It's like, here it is. Brand new. It just was delivered today, and I don't know why, because I work here and nobody really ordered it. But here it is. We're set. So that was just one small thing, but it was also including the participants, things that happened during the conference, like I talked about bilocation, and then some of the participants experienced bilocation, and we're able to talk about that. It was just extraordinary. A very, very small conference. And then HBO was there, and they filmed it for inclusion in How To with John Wilson. It's an HBO program, and it's on season 1. I forget which episode, but it's I think it's the How to Improve Your Memory episode. That's the one. Anyway, I do experience this all the time. And collectively, what seems to be happening is when we are, and what we noticed amongst ourselves was none of us wanted credit. We weren't hogging fame, glory. We weren't off balance in any of these ways that the Christians would call deadly sins, or the Buddhists would call just off of the middle way. We were very much in alignment with, we would like to serve humanity. That's what we would like to reveal, is what is the good that the Mandela Effect can show us. And that was the educational purpose of the organization. And then against all odds, we had this conference. miraculous things happen there and continue to happen. So it feels to me like this is a sign. It just shows that when people do come together without trying to claim the glory, even though I mentioned a Nobel Prize, if I really believe whoever's going to get that prize will do it because they're in highest service, recognizing it's not the glory. I'd like to actually know, can we build mathematics on verbiness, beingness, rather than thinginess? Because things may be not real. But this is amazing. Yeah, amazing miracles happen. I hear it a lot from people who experience Mandela effects and reality shifts together. And from spiritual communities, I hear so much about people in groups of prayer or powers of 8 groups where they're working with some kind of healing intention, where all people from all paths of spiritual paths can come together in basically prayer or positive intent for others. And the outcome seems to be positively magnified. So there's a huge benefit from communities coming together. And it makes sense to me because that's entanglement. So it's showing that there's, and you can hear it like in a symphony when groups of instrumentalists play together beautifully. It sounds better. I'm going on. I love this subject, and I love your questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, many people are newly awakening to the current reality of our world, or the situation humanity finds itself in, are hyper-focused on the physical manifestations or lack thereof as evidence that reality is changing for the better. Is it possible for things to be changing for the better when we don't see any physical manifestations of that, or when we are even presented with the appearance that things are getting worse?
Oh my gosh, yes. And this is not a change of subject. I know it seems like it. Bear with me, trust me. Okay, when I was a child, my favorite cartoon was Mr. Magoo. And I don't know if people know the cartoon. You can look it up and watch it on YouTube. But I was a little blonde girl who adored this little bald guy wearing Coke bottle lens glasses who can't see anything apparently and gets himself into the most terrible fixes. It seems like things are constantly going wrong for this poor little dude. But somehow it always works out okay. And that is the attitude. It's the Mr. Magoo attitude. That's because I would like us to admit, first of all, can we really see true reality with these senses we've been given, the true reality? Are we sure of that? Are we absolutely sure? Would you bet your life or everything you love most on it? I personally would not. So just recognizing, okay, maybe I'm not quite as blind as Mr. Magoo in one way, but maybe this is the perfect way of looking at it. And in my experience, when I've seen things seem to go wrong, I just keep asking, how good can it get? I don't lose my faith. And this is where it helps. Faith, I believe, comes from meeting other people who have it. I think that's where we strengthen it the most, because it's really hard to come up with faith on our own. So this is where it helps to find somebody that you know who believes in something so good, and you just love being around them. If you're wondering, I don't know anyone like that, find someone like that in your life. Because I don't think it matters which religion they're affiliated with so much as their true, absolute, unshakable faith that this ultimate goodness is true and exists and is real. And that's when things can go right eventually. So when things seem to be going really badly, it's not the end of the story. That just means you turn another page, you keep going, and maybe find some humor in it if you can. If that's too hard, just keep asking, how good can it get? But I have seen so many miracles happen literally way past what you would think was the last moment. You'd think, well, it's all over. It's getting worse. It's going really downhill. Just keep asking, how good can it get? And if it as honestly and as aligned as possible with someone you know who has true faith, who's latched on to and entangled with that ultimate goodness, because those are like the bright stars in the sky, and that we can help each other. We do help each other.
Amen. And you always find what you're looking for. So if you're looking for someone, you will find them.
Yes.
How do we ourselves contribute to whether we do or do not see physical manifestations of our desires? What I'm thinking of is one of the things I deal with a lot is healing trauma, right? We talk about what is the ego, and I believe that what we need to do is heal our traumas, and then we'll find our true self versus the self that we thought we were based on, our circumstances and our life experience. And so, we are creating through our ego, in the sense that we're creating through our traumas, and we have these beliefs about ourselves and reality. And so when we see or don't see a physical manifestation of our desires, are we contributing through our higher self? I guess that's the reality shifter part of us, or are we contributing through our ego? So I guess I
Right.
answered my own question, but maybe.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I can add to it. You're right. When we're on that drama triangle, because we're born as victims, all of us are. There's no exception. We're born helpless. So something somewhere is going to go wrong, and it will be traumatic to that little infant. Maybe someone won't come exactly when they're hungry, or what have you. But we're born helpless. So we kind of come into the drama triangle naturally. We're born there. And then as we grow up, sometimes some of us who are empaths feel that we need to be looking after others, carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders, and feeling kind of anxious and maybe paranoid and nervous and scared, frightful about what could happen next and what's going on over there. And a little bit hovercrafty, a little bit maybe hyper involved with other people's lives. So these are roles on the drama triangle. There's a third role of the triangle, which is the perpetrator, who believes they do have the facts, they are right, and we're going to fix it now for everyone. So you can say that people have genuinely good motives at every point on the drama triangle, the victim triangle. It starts as a victim. So the victims, you recognize them because they're grief-stricken and sad, and no matter what happens, there's no point, don't you see? I'm stuck. And you can recognize the rescuer because if you're not worried about what's going on, then you're not paying attention. This is terrifying. You should be scared. Like, really. And then and then you can recognize the persecutor because they're that role. And it's a merry-go-round. We go through all of them. So when you're on it, you're just on that merry-go-round, unpleasant ride. And the perpetrator is the one who's like, I found the facts, and I'm going to ram this down everyone's throat. We're going to do this my way or the highway. And then, oops, do I sound like Hitler? Maybe. Okay, so this is how that happens. And can we rise above it? Absolutely. So it begins by recognizing that that's happening, and then being kind and loving with ourselves. You recognize the process and starting to pay attention when we're in any of those roles. Sometimes one feels like, but I'm good because I'm the victim. I've done nothing wrong. Yeah, maybe. And I'm right, I'm the persecutor. So we have these things that can justify the role we're adopting, but these are limited ways to live. So the true reality shifting way for best results is to rise above the drama and to let go of attachment to feeling like I want to claim my victimhood. That's my identity. If you're willing to give up that identity, you'll get actually better reality shifts. If you same thing with all the other roles. It's just the same thing. But sometimes we're attuned to one of those roles more than others, so we tend to identify with it like that's me, or I'm. So the path forward is upward. It's to recognize there is a higher level of yourself who can observe you. And this is my definition of consciousness that I love, that Leibniz came up with. I think he may have been inspired by I think, therefore I am, Descartes. So he came along after Descartes. Here we have another mathematician, the inventor of calculus. I look to mathematicians as I think they're onto something here. So when we see that this original perception that you can observe something and you can feel like my fingers are touching them, the thumb and forefinger are touching, that's a perception, and I'm aware that I am having a perception of this, then that's a second order, which is like calculus, a second order observation of the initial observation. So I love how Leibniz points out that looks like this is the beginning of consciousness. I agree. And to me, this is the identification of self, and it gets to your original points about empaths and how we can feel like we're feeling things. Where are our boundaries? And then how do we move within this realm? And reality shifting is all about that.
What practical actions can people who want to change the world take to push events in the direction we want and not unwittingly hinder the shifting of reality in the desired direction?
And there we go to recognizing that you are hopefully starting to become aware, or maybe just take a chance at believing, okay, I'm aligned with something bigger, better, wholer than myself. Maybe that does exist. Maybe there is this infinite, eternal love. If so, let's start each day and say, okay, I am in alignment with you. And I will ask this question to be part of this process. How good can it get? Because that's the part I can do. And then I will trust and have faith that what's unfolding, even though it may not look right, it's serving some good for someone somewhere. Someone needs it, I guess. But I'm going to keep asking, how good can it get? Like, really? This is the best we can do? How good can it get? I like to ask it with a laugh, with joy. And I like to challenge, like, how good can it get? Because this looks like a mess right now. So show us, what can we get from this? Obviously, there's something we never would have seen otherwise. I believe that. But where is it? And I believe by asking an open-ended question, and not just for me, but for everyone and everything, for all that is, then it's much more of a collective uplifting than that kind of problem that some of us may have encountered. I know I have, where if I just go after what I think I want, I can end up painted in some kind of a corner. It's good for that moment, but then later I might realize, ooh, wish I hadn't kind of tilted reality that way, because I can see it actually did hurt this other person. I've actually seen that. So then when you've witnessed that and you feel like, I think I had a part in that, whoops, then that's a learning opportunity. And then I would recommend, let's go back to how good can it get for all of us. And the more you can feel it, the better it actually happens. So, but it's okay to start just by asking. And even though you may not really feel it, like, it feels sarcastic to ask it right now. Like, things are going wrong. I feel like a hypocrite or something, but how good can it get? Ask it anyway, no matter what.
Thank you. After what we've spoken about today so far, how would you respond to the person who still asks, are we to just sit here quietly for 25 years and hold light, hoping our children and family feel connected enough to stick around and disengage from the matrix that's going on all around them in their communities? In other words, what words of comfort can you offer to people who are really afraid of what's happening on the world scene?
Gosh, you are so important. You were born for these times. And I personally, I love Mr. Magoo. I told you that earlier. I can relate to that because I feel like I came into this planet and I felt like I was a misfit from birth. I felt like, what am I doing here? And I hadn't even held light for that long. I was 5. And I thought, I want off this merry-go-round. This can't be, I don't think I'm helping. And I had basically, long story short, I felt like I'd talked to angels. I felt like they'd shown me, you're here for a reason. You don't see the good you're doing, but you're doing tremendous good, which has been concealed from you so you can actually do the good. Because if you could see it, then it's not the same. Apparently I do better when I can't see what I'm doing, because I try harder personally. I've noticed that I was in a chemistry class and our teacher didn't give grades out in college for weeks, and it was like halfway through the class. Finally, I didn't demand. I thought, I'm just going to keep doing my best. So finally, he posts the grades up on the wall. There's this little person way up there, and like, who is that? Like, oh, that's me. Because when I don't know how I'm doing, I try really hard. And I think maybe that's true for all of us. Try in the sense of love more, be kind more, be connected to source more. People know if they're on that spiritual path, they know what good is for them. And that good you're doing is making a huge difference by the beingness that you are. You're changing your family. You're changing your friends. You're changing everything. So it's almost no higher calling than to be just on that spiritual path. That's the best thing anybody could be doing. And you're uplifting everyone.
Thank you. Yeah. When we talk and when I'm listening to you, our experiences, our life experiences are totally different. And there's a couple of thoughts that I've had during this conversation, which is, I think this is why the star seeds came here, is reality probably always shifts like this during harvest time. And the star seeds are here in order to, kind of remember that and do what you're doing, which is remind others to awaken to that higher part of themselves. And I feel like my life, what I chose to do is come in and go in deep into a dark hole so that I could realize how big the role of trauma is. One video that I recently made is what happens when what's the purpose of spiritual practice, and what happens if you feel like it's not working for you. Like, when I would try to feel gratitude and raise my vibe and ask myself, how good could it get? And it pissed me off. It made me so angry. And I've been so close to suicide so many times that, I felt stuck. But I also, a part of me knew that I was here to do something else. It was a strange dichotomy, if you want to call it that. And And I now, in retrospect, I got out of that negative situation, which enabled me to be able to feel the backup of pain and trauma that I had. I mean, I'm not attached to it, but I use dramatic, because at the time, that's what it felt like. It felt like that was my experience. And I had to love that experience. I had to engage with my true experience in order to be able to detach from it, if that makes sense. And so I guess I really appreciate the differences in all of our experiences. I mean, if we, like you said, if you keep doing your best and you keep going, the only way you can fail is by completely giving up, really.
Right.
Reality is always going to shift, and we have our ups and downs. It's not all crap and it's not all great, so if you can just keep going and start to come out of this tunnel, then we're all going to get to where we need to be.
I think we get our rough edges knocked off by life too. We get tumbled in the great tumbler of life. Yeah. So all those little pokey edges where I just want to be angry at some point, it doesn't really work for us. So that's one of the drama triangle points. If you're very, very angry, then you're probably trying to prove things are right. You're hanging on to some belief system really tightly. And, the same thing is true if someone's really grief stricken and they just feel like they can't get out of that sadness, or if they're really afraid. So those three are big tip-offs. And then there are some polyvagal nervous system programs and books and information that's brand new. Like you're right about the star seeds. I think polyvagal treatment, that's something brand new that I never heard about, but it's new for us at this amazing time when we need it, so we can stay calm even when there's so many triggers pushing all of our buttons collectively. And I love what you said, we're so individual. Thank goodness you went through what you went through, not because not because that you should have gone through it, you know what I mean, but because you were able to come through it with the gifts that you're able to bring, that there's no way no one else could bring those gifts. No one else could say, look, I have been where you are coming from, because you have, and then you're not sounding like, oh, what are you doing wrong? If you were a good person, this would not have happened to you. Like, wait a minute, this did happen.
Yeah.
So you're able to relate to people that other people just can't, and so you're quite a blessing, and to be able to share that.
Yeah, it was worthlessness. I mean, at the bottom of my pit of despair is feeling worthless, and I'm still on the journey out, but once I realized, I'm infinitely worthy. That takes a long time to absorb. If you really that was never reflected to me in my life. Or actually, was it? Maybe I just missed it.
Well, that's a good thing to look back as a reality shifter and just see maybe there were signs of it there, because we remember the cosmos forbids a single history. So could there be a history where there were little signs and little rays of light, like fairies and elves and angels all along the way, shining brightly, those little magical birds showing up in the sand pits of life, just shining on and saying, you can do this, we need you. So it's possible. I've heard so many amazing experiences, firsthand reports from people that I share on my website, and it would not shock me if you could suddenly realize, I'm getting these other memories that I don't think I had before. Is that what it feels like to shift reality? Yeah. And especially when other people share them with you too, like remembering things like, Christina, remember when we were little kids and this happened? And you're like, no, but that sounds amazing. Tell me more.
Yeah, maybe you could speak on that as a final question about rewriting your past.
Yes. Well, my approach is the Magoo approach. How good can it get? Don't assume that we know what we're doing. I don't think we do. So instead, always my recommendation is give that guidance to a higher level of connectedness and entanglement, so we can learn to be detached. And I think that's the ultimate key to changing the past. I get so many emails from people who would like to bring a loved one back, or just want to change a mistake from their past. If this one thing hadn't happened, they write to me, everything would be so much better. And they said it's been decades later and I'm kicking myself. My whole life came unraveled after that one thing. Can I change that one thing? And so the key, obviously, can they? Anything's possible. Anything at all is possible, for sure. But to start with such an epic level miracle, when this is a person who's very skeptical and has trouble programming a parking space, well, we have some weightlifting to do, grasshopper, before we can do mighty martial arts things. So, is it possible? Yes. And God can do the heavy lifting. The cosmos can do the heavy lifting. Whatever you want to believe in that higher sense of love and organization. But it does start with being entangled with love. I recommend, if you can love, the more you can love, the better. Start by loving pets if you don't trust people. If you believe in angels and you can love them, that's great. And you want to sort of expand your love network. And then maybe down the road, you can start learning to trust people again. Some people have trouble with that. Understandably, loving people can be hard, but can you love small defenseless kittens and puppies? And hopefully so. You can start there, and house plants, and then just feel like, okay, I'm entangled. Now, what's the detachment feel like? That feels like recognizing everything's going to change, and you're going to be okay. Everything can be taken from us, and we can still be okay. Everything. And that's a huge concept to grasp. And I don't wish for everything to be taken away from everyone. It's hard when that happens. So, but change happens. Let's uplift one another. Let's be there for one another. Let's be kind to ourselves. We can do this together. And there are many aspects within each of us that can help us. We can be our own best friends.
Thank you so much for joining me today.
Such a pleasure, Christina. Thank you so much for all the questions. And thank your wonderful partner too, because this is just amazing. That viewpoint, brilliant. Just like, I think together you're a great partnership, because you're bringing it into a way that it makes sense for the questions to be coming together with such a different way of looking at things.
Thank you. Well, I hope we can speak again, and that time he'll be sitting next to me.
Yay! Well, that's great. And such a pleasure. Thank you so much for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. Namaste.
Take care.
If after watching this interview you want to see more of Cynthia's content, which I highly recommend, please click the links in the description box below this video. Please give us a thumbs up on this video, subscribe to our channel, and share. Thank you for watching and listening. Namaste.